Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the McAuley Tucker Show. I'm your host, McAuley Tucker, and today we have a very special guest, John Morris. John Morris was the voice of Andy in the Toy Story franchise, Toy Story 1, Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, even Toy Story 4. And today on the show, we'll be talking to John about his career, how he started, what happened during the filming of Toy Story 1, Toy Story 2, and all the other Toy Stories, and maybe towards the end, he can pass on some things to you guys. First and foremost, John, hopefully you're having a great day. I guess our first question will have to be, what got you into the role of Andy in Toy Story?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me on, and it's great to meet you. And I was taking acting classes and workshops in the Bay Area where I grew up, and I got an agent, from one of those acting workshops. There was kind of like an agent showcase, then I got an agent from that. And then I started auditioning for on camera, a lot of on camera work, and then some voiceover work. And then this audition came up, to voice Andy. And it was basically an open call for, young male actors. And they asked us to bring our favorite toy to the audition. And I brought all my X-Men figures. So I was 6 years old. I brought all my X-Men figures because to me that was one toy. It still is one toy to me. And my mom said that's too many, and I said no, this they'll get it. And I just kind of the first audition was just recording us playing with our toy, and I launched in and I created all the voices, for Professor X and Wolverine and Storm and everything. And then in later auditions and then the callback, they had us read from the script, and they told me later that the way I played with toys and engaged in play and imagination was how they envisioned Andy. And so I think that's what finally kind of landed me the role.
You mentioned a little bit earlier that you auditioned for several projects, and I was curious what sort of projects you auditioned for that you didn't get in.
Yeah, so I had early on I did a Chevron commercial and an Isuzu commercial and gosh, like an Old Navy commercial. So more, like on camera and voiceover commercials, is kind of what I had done. And then this was moving more into obviously a feature film and creating a character with my voice, which was really exciting for me at the time and is still exciting for me, those kinds of projects.
Some people might not know this, but you also were in Nightmare Before Christmas. Can you share a little bit about that experience working on that film?
So Toy Story came out, and I was in '95, and then Nightmare Before Christmas came out. I want to say a little bit later than that. Um, I think. And yeah, I was a little bit older when I worked on Nightmare Before Christmas. And that was an amazing project because I got to work with Tim Burton, and it also recorded in the Bay Area. And I recorded additional voices for that, and also Santa Boy, who's the first boy in the town who Jack Skeleton finds when he gets to the town. And Jack Skeleton lands on the roof, and Santa Boy goes, Santa, Santa, and then runs down the stairs. And that was a really, really fun project.
Working on Toy Story for all these years, people who've starred in these films, like the original actor who did the voice of Slinky, many of them have unfortunately passed away. And working on these films, doing the voice of Andy and hearing about this news, how did this impact you when you found out and heard about these actors who've worked on this film that you've worked on passing away?
Yeah, so I typically would learn about it just like anyone else learns about it, like from the news or social media. And it was really sad. I mean, it's very sad. It's a great loss. Um, these are professional actors who've done a lot of projects, and then of course they voiced these special characters in these films. And I do know Blake Clark, who replaced Jim Varney as Slinky Dog, and they were friends. And so that's very that's very meaningful in a way. And Blake actually kind of shared with me like how he steps into the voice, and the fact that he knew Jim really helped him with that. And yeah, but it's always, it always was hard to hear the news, and just like as I'm sure fans feel, of course. And then it would remind me of like little memories I had meeting them at premieres, and things like that. Yeah.
Assuming that you've collected a lot of Toy Story memorabilia, and I was curious to ask you involving this, would you say you have more Toy Story related memorabilia at your house than any other type of memorabilia that you've collected over the years?
Yes. I do have I Disney and Pixar have always been very generous in sending me toys and very cool things. And I have some really amazing Toy Story toys and related objects and trophies and awards and amazing things like that that I really value. I also collect, I mentioned earlier I'm an X-Men fan. And so I have X-Men figures and Game of Thrones figures and uh, other things like that. But I would say yes, I definitely have lots of special Toy Story objects that I love.
Branching off my question, working on Toy Story, doing the voice of Andy, leaving these recording sessions, were you given any gifts from the crew? Or did you take anything from the sets home to, remind you of working on these films?
I don't think I was given anything, uh, but like from the actual recording sessions or anything. But I do have this very cool 20th anniversary statue that is that's the little alien uh, figure, and then I have the Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 scripts that are hardbound, and they're signed by all, the team, and I really love those. And I also have a Andy toy that I love that's from Japan. So I think those kind of stand out.
This is
Yeah.
going to be definitely a very challenging question for you, but you, as the voice of Andy in the entire Toy Story franchise, what would you say is your favorite toy in between Buzz and Woody?
It's hard. It's hard to pick favorites. I just feel like they're different. They're different for Andy in that Woody was there first. Woody was kind of like the OG there first, and his whole room was cowboy western themed. And then Buzz arrives on the scene, and they're so different in that they each kind of bring their own world with them. I guess I would say I have a soft spot in my heart because for Woody, because he was the first one there, in a way, before the shiny new toy came. That being said, Buzz is very cool, and so
This was a question that I was wanting to ask you involving your character, Andy. At the end of Toy Story 3, we see Andy going off to college and heading off to college, leaving his toys behind. And I was going to ask you this involving Andy. We don't really know what job Andy is wanting to pursue, and what job he gets in the future. And so I was going to ask you this, again, you might not be the best person to answer this question, but what job do you think Andy is pursuing in college?
great question. And I have had a lot of fans ask me this, and they have interesting thoughts about this. Andy's such a good person. Like, he's such a good person with a good heart. And so when I've thought about him and kind of going to college and leaving college and everything, I've sort of thought about him doing something that benefits others, like a doctor or a teacher, something like that. Um, he also is so creative and, like creates these worlds with his toys. And so people have said maybe he's an animator, maybe he's a director, that sort of thing. Um, But I definitely think he does something that benefits others because he seems to care for others and just be like a caring person. Yeah.
This is another question similar to my other one involving the character Andy. We never really see or hear or get any reference of Andy's father throughout the entire Toy Story franchise. We don't even see him in any pictures at all. And I was curious to ask you, the voice of Andy, where do you think and what do you think happened to Andy's father?
No, my honest answer is I don't know. I don't know. I've it's very interesting because I've talked with a lot of fans and friends about this, and there's a kind of a legacy in Disney and Pixar movies of like there being a missing parent and things like that. And I think it I think the reason my personal viewpoint is that the reason that that's present is it kind of shows that there are different kinds of families, and also that the protagonist or kind of the kid in the movie or the main character needs to kind of navigate things on their own and like figure things out for themselves. And so honestly I don't know where Andy's dad is or what the story is there. Um Maybe that would be answered, I don't know, in a future movie if there is one or movie. But it's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah.
Working on all these animated projects over the years and developing and creating voices for yourself, what would you say is your favorite voice out of all the voices that you've made?
I have a voiceover agent, and I still do voiceover, and I audition on for lots of different projects, because voiceover is a whole world of its own. And I'd still say though that my favorite projects are when I get to create a character with my voice, because that's really special, and that's I can use my creativity, as a voiceover artist and actor. Yeah. In all the auditions I do, because I audition for characters that are animals and like and humans and robots and stuff like that, which is kind of wild. I think I do like to audition. I like to create voices for humans because to me it's a challenge. It's like create create a voice for a human who's not you, you know? And I think I have my voice, and then Andy has his voice, and Santa Boy has his voice, and it's just interesting to kind of, step into another character, who's human, and just try to make it original, you know?
I know the Buzz Lightyear movie is releasing soon, and I was curious to ask if you are excited for this film to release, since it's related to the Toy Story franchise.
I am excited for it. Um, and it comes out next month, and I am actually really excited for it because I was reading about it, different articles and things, and they were saying this is probably, like what Andy saw that made him want to get the toy. So so I feel like I need to see. I'm obviously going to see it, and am excited to. And just from the trailers I've seen, it looks pretty cool, and yeah, it looks kind of I like it's sort of like an origin story, which I like origin stories, and I think it's gonna be really awesome. Yeah.
My last question is a question I ask all my guests. What would you like to pass on to any of the listeners that you would like them to apply to their everyday life?
It's a great question. I think a message I'd like to pass along is for people to be true to themselves and to kind of find in life what they care about and what they love to do and commit to it, and with authenticity and purpose.
Thank you so much for answering my main questions. Now we're moving on to a segment where I get my listeners and fans to send in questions for our guests. And our first question we have here is from my friend Ethan Henry. Ethan is wondering, what did your friends think when they found out that you were doing the voice of Andy when you were in school?
So I'd say yes, everyone did kind of recognize my voice, and then they kind of knew I was involved. And I'll just say that, my mom raised me, especially like to be humble about these things. But once people did find out about them, about this and my connection to the films, they get very excited and want to hear lots of things and have lots, questions and things, totally understandably. And a lot of people, the films mean a lot to them and the characters mean a lot to them, so it's always meaningful for me to talk to them.
My last listener question is from my friend Josh. Josh is wondering, how do you feel knowing your character, Andy, is translated into different languages across the world into different versions of the Toy Story film?
That's really cool. I've actually never thought about that, and I don't think I've heard any of the translations, but I think it'd be interesting to listen to them. And obviously it wasn't me who recorded them, but it'd be interesting to hear, like, how I'm sure that they cast actors who sound like me, but it would just be interesting to kind of hear that kind of expression. Yeah, now I want to look it up.
Hey everybody, it's McAuley Tucker. There was a terrible mic issue during the interview. Instead of removing the parts of the interview where the audio was damaged, I wanted to try my best to fix it and leave it in the interview, but instead of putting it in the selected part, I wanted to remove it and put it towards the end of the interview so you can decide if you wanted to listen to it or not. I apologize for the inconvenience. Enjoy the show. Working on Toy Story, you were casted as Andy at a very, very young age, and I was curious to ask you this very quick question. Was it difficult for you to record these lines at a young age for Andy?
Voicing Andy was not difficult because I had the director right there with me in the booth, and the voiceover read from the script.
Working on all the Toy Stories throughout the years, I was curious to ask you what has been your favorite part about working on the Toy Story franchise.
Character rendering, storyboards, character models. That was always very, very special. See the creative process.
Listening to some of your interviews before, you've talked about meeting cast members on the Toy Story films, and I was curious to ask you, was there anything any one of these cast members have told you that you've kept locked up and have remembered to this day?
Great question. I mostly met Toy Story cast members at the premieres. I've had great conversations with all of them. I did talk with Tom Hanks at the Toy Story 4 premiere, and he said to me, gosh, this was just a masterpiece, wasn't it? And these films are such masterpieces. And I said, yes, they are. I completely agree with you.
Thank you, John, for coming on the show. It is really appreciated. For all those who listen to this interview, thank you guys so much, and I apologize for the inconvenience on the mic. If you guys like to check out what John is up to, just check my description. You can find out all his socials. Until next time, you guys have a good one. God bless.